Okay, so we're going to change tack slightly, and we're going to present what you've told us. So as part of this conference, our theme is the State of the Industry Survey, and we're going to share the results with you. Now, I've only got half an hour, so I'm going to really share the results. I'll try and give you a little bit of a flavour of thoughts, and you'll have your own thoughts. This will be ongoing, so we're not going to just talk about it for the next half an hour and that's it. Already, our next Seeker Bulletin we've got scheduled, which is coming out in 2 weeks' time, will be a summary of this, and we're going to see where we're going to go with these results that we've got and where we're going to take them. So why the survey? Well, it's clear from training and also group discussions within our LinkedIn group that we've still got the same old issues, the same problems, same misconceptions that are still prevalent in our industry. So this survey is focusing on a few of those elements to try and establish what the real state of play was. And several of you here and in the wider industry have taken our survey and we're presenting the results. 10 years ago, and I'd forgotten actually, and quite interestingly, when I look back at the questions we asked, some of them overlapped. So 10 years ago at this very conference, we did a similar survey and we could compare some of the results along the way. So anything in red means that is a result from 10 years ago. So we'll pick up on those as we go through. So let's take our results and see where we're heading in as an industry and consider where we are currently and where we consider that we should be going forward. Just for information, this is the over 150 people taking the survey. It's still live, so you can still add to it. We can get latest data. So yeah, a lot of contractors, consultants, few clients, few, I'll still call them subcontractors. I'll let Joseph correct me when he comes to his presentation, and I'll be happy for his correction. And none of the above. So lawyers, people like that. So other people that didn't fit into those categories. Important people like that. Okay, first question. We asked, I've not done all of them, how many of your projects use an online administration tool to manage your NEC documentation flow? And in your own heads, you can think, oh, what might the number might be? And 72%. So, not bad. Not bad. That still means 28% aren't. And in this day and age of technology, why would we not want to use a tool that's going to help us manage the flow of communication? So 28% of projects are using manual pro forma and registers, and I suspect fax machines as well on their projects. So we need to evolve, okay? We need to evolve, and 72%, great number, but that needs to be higher, I suggest. We went one stage further. Where a cloud-based system is used between the client and the contractor, what proportion of subcontract packages are also managed under a cloud-based system? Higher or lower? Lower. Wasn't a real question, was it? 33%. I actually think, I'll use this word several times in this presentation. I actually think that's quite shocking. So we take the time to set up one of these great systems to manage that flow and transparency and clarity between the parties, between the client and the contractor. We recognise that. Over 2/3 of projects are doing that. Yet at subcontract level, we're not doing that, and only 1/3 of us have the sense to actually do that with our supply chain. They're relatively inexpensive. Think Project Digital Beehive will tell you they're very cheap today, so have a word with them. They are relatively inexpensive for the benefit they bring. There's several out there. I recommend you trial several of them and see which one you're comfortable with gives you the benefit. But I often hear about contractors, you moaning about the old subbies, they don't follow the rules, they're not following the process. First of all, you're not vetting them in the first place to make sure they understand it. And secondly, you're not setting up the very system that would help manage that flow and help them do what they should be doing. These cloud-based systems kind of force you down the road of doing the right thing. So crazy, really, that we're not doing that. As a percentage, approximately what proportion of your early warnings would you say go on to become compensation events? 46%. I've got nothing to say on that because I put it in, but I agree with, I think it was John, and if you can tell me or John of any KPI that will be relevant in the number of early warnings or in relation to early warnings to compensation events, well, we're all ears, but we can't think of one. So there's no real correlation between early warnings and compensation events. They're very separate entities. Neil has arrived. He's going to be talking compensation events this afternoon. They are completely separate processes, so there is no real correlation. It was just an interesting number. I don't think that's bad. You know, obviously, early warnings are trying to avoid problems becoming a problem, but you can't really judge that number because you could raise a lot that aren't really worthwhile. You could not put many in. So just an interesting stat. Sometimes early warnings can be viewed as a commercial tool by either party, which is not their intent. As a percentage, how often do you see early warnings being taken negatively? Surely you got that one cracked, have we, as an industry? 55% of people say it's still seen as some. So, all right, it doesn't mean the whole project, but still 55% of people are seeing it negatively. 10 years ago, okay, we're making headway. 84% 10 years ago. So we're making headway, but that needs to be a better number, I suggest, than 55%. Why shouldn't that be down to 30, 20%? Have a look at the Seeker Stand bulletin this month, because of that stat, is about a positive approach to early warnings. Following on from John's talk, have a look at that bulletin as well. We've got to get that number better as an industry. Okay, I don't know what number Nicola's going to give me for this answer. What percentage of Z clauses would you consider are worthy, useful and contribute to making a positive difference to the management of that project? Come on, Nicola, give me a number. Okay, what do you reckon the audience answer was? What do you reckon?
Oh, I reckon it's about 50, 60.
50, 50?
Yeah.
In your dreams. 29%. Okay. But the trouble is, Nicola's landing them on sheet right, and obviously they'd be fine, so 100%. But as an industry, 29% of Z clauses are viewed as positive and worthy and worthwhile, which means 71% are viewed, doesn't mean it's right, but viewed as a waste of time or causing problems. Okay, what do you reckon the number was 10 years ago? I'm not making this up. It was 29%. I can show you the stats. So genuinely, I was surprised to see that. So in 10 years...
They're not updating their drafts, that's the problem.
So in 10 years, we've not made any progress. We are still the view of the industry. This doesn't mean it's fact, okay? This isn't the right answer, but the view of the wider industry is that less than a third of Z clauses are viewed as positive. So surely with something, Nicola had some great advice in all of that lot, that yes, we do need to be reviewing Z clauses, challenging them, making sure we're using them in the right place, but not in the wrong place. So that number is telling us we've still got a long way to go in getting Z clauses understood. There is some danger we're preaching to the converted today, because I think a lot of the times we know these things. Well, it's up to us to get out there and get this into the industry. Okay, how often do you typically get an accepted program? And the results were 30% every month or every period, just over 40% every 2 to 3 months. So that's 1 in 2 or 1 in 3. And 30% of projects are rarely or never. Okay, I'll use this word again. That is shocking. As an industry, as an ex-planner, as an ex-planning manager, I'd be ashamed if that was my project and those stats. So we've got to think about why is this happening and how can we improve this. 10 years ago, similar numbers, so slightly different skew. Before the QSs tell me that doesn't up to 100. I know the right numbers, so people didn't vote on that survey, so but roughly similar numbers. So we're still 40, less than 30% of projects are achieving what we're looking for, which is an accepted program every period. And why would you not want an accepted program? Why are we not getting it? Okay, we need to look at it, and we need to challenge ourselves as an industry and get better. Have you ever experienced a deemed accepted program where the project manager under the ECC or the service manager under the PSC contract had failed to respond to the program and a subsequent reminder? I'm sure you're familiar with this clause. It was new into NEC 4. A lot of us in this room campaigned for it, and very pleased to see NEC receptive to put it in. So you submit a program, and the project manager or the service manager has to respond within 2 weeks. And if they don't, you can now remind them. And if they don't respond within a further week, it is deemed accepted. I'm very pleased to report that not many clients delete that deemed acceptance. You might think they might, and no doubt some of you have found that they do occasionally, but on the whole, that is not a Z clause that generally is done. Surely they're not going to be that bad, are they? You can't imagine. What's this going to be? 2%, 5%, 30%. 30% of project managers and service managers don't do their job, are reminded they've not done their job, and still don't do their job. So quite incredulous, really. And it's deemed accepted now. So by not doing their job, well, it's still accepted, so why not do that? I have had one client in the past that said, yeah, we're okay with the program, so we don't need to respond because they'll remind us anyway, and then it becomes deemed accepted. Why let that process play out? Why just not accept the program? Please, project managers, service managers, do your job. What is the average response time? Would you say it takes for the relevant party to respond to a compensation and quotation? Now, I don't think this was misunderstood by people, but there's another more important one in a minute when we talk about the whole process. But just responding to the quotation, we've got, what's that, just over 10%, so 15% saying within 2 weeks. And then you've got just over 50% within a month, which is 2 weeks beyond the time they should be taking. And then you've got 34% within several months. Well, that's good of them. So within several months. Now, NEC's got a resolution for this because 62.6 says if there's no response to the quotation, the contractor can notify the lack of response, and then after a further 2 weeks, this time 2 weeks, it would be treated as having been accepted, i.e. Deemed accepted. However, that is often not initiated. So I find the contractor doesn't put the reminder in. So they don't initiate the deemed acceptance. Why? Well, either it's been deleted as a Z clause, not on Nicola's watch, but on other watches, they might have deleted that as a Z clause. And again, I find that incredulous, that a client is going to, as Nicola already said, delete the deemed acceptance just means it's open-ended and neither parties know where they are. How can that be beneficial to anyone? Or it's viewed as being a bit too confrontational. So the contractor thinks, well, we don't want to put in this reminder. It feels a bit confrontational on our client. Or they have to admit we don't follow our own timescales, and if we push them on theirs, they're pushing us on ours. Contractors, anyone want to admit that? Okay, well done for being honest. No one else has put their hand up. It's only you, apparently. But I'm sure there's lots of other people in the room. So if we as contractors follow our own timescales, then we'll be more confident, hopefully, to actually making the clients follow their timescales as well. Verbal instructions. Okay. Clause 13.1 says any communication the contract requires must be in a form that can be read, copied and recorded. Nice and simple. 13.7 says any notification the contract requires is communicated separately from other forms of communication. If you've been in the group, you might have seen this one. So we did a survey, because I didn't put it in the original survey that went out. So we polled this in the group, and we got even more answers to it, so we've got the stats. In the past year, have you or anyone in your team acted on a verbal instruction or given a verbal instruction expecting it to be followed? We all know we shouldn't be following verbal instructions, right? So what do you reckon the answer was? 2/3 are still following verbal instructions. So we know we shouldn't be following them, yet we're still following verbal instructions. Okay, I want to get a bit of advice from one of my very respected, learned colleagues here. Let's ask Barry from Chiefs Consulting a question. What should a contractor say if they get a verbal instruction from a project manager to change the scope?
Well, very simple. Contractors shouldn't proceed until you get an instruction from the project manager in writing. Simple as that. That's what we're saying. Don't do anything different. You're contracted to provide works, in turn and accordance with the scope. You don't do anything different.
Okay.
If it's urgent, you'll get there quickly.
Okay. So I think the simple message of Barry there is they should not proceed until it's confirmed by the project manager in writing. Is that correct? Okay. Well, that's Barry from Chiefs Consulting. Let's ask Barry from EastEnders. Okay. Let's ask what a contractor is likely to say if they get a verbal instruction.
We're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway. We're gonna do it anyway.
Okay. I'll let you decide which Barry's advice to follow. Okay, so other Barrys are available, I believe. So we've had a very good discussion on that point in the NEC People LinkedIn group that suggested some exceptions would be valid. So it's a very worthy point. You know, if it's really urgent and you've got a good relationship. The trouble is, though, if we start making exceptions to the rule, then those exceptions grow arms and legs and they get bigger, and then people are left, well, hang on, am I meant to do it this time or not? So I think we really just need to stick to the same rule. As Barry already said there, if it's urgent, then you'll get it in writing. So we shouldn't be hiding behind that, and it should be something that is we can make sure we're doing on our projects. That should be a simple thing, and I'm amazed, I'm not really, but surprised that still 2/3 of people are pushed into that. So much simpler to say no verbal instructions, unless it's health and safety matter. I didn't add that in at the break. I had that in already, okay, to make that. So that was already in my slide pack. What would you say is the average time for a compensation event that is notified to become implemented, agreed? Okay, buckle up. Less than 4 weeks, very impressive, about 7 or 8%. 1 to 2 months, which I don't think is unreasonable, not bad. So we're up at sort of about 38%. Then we get to 3 to 4 months, about 28, 29%. 4 to 6 months, 14%, and longer than 6 months is around about 13%. And in 2014, not dissimilar numbers, okay? Not dissimilar numbers. How long does it take to tender a whole job? I'll just leave that thought with you. So we tender a whole job, which is multi-millions in weeks, and yet we take months to agree a value that's a proportion of what that is. So something's not right there. And it's, who does that benefit if it's taking that long to agree? Well, no one, because neither party know and understand where they are. What percentage of quotations do you find a project manager under the ECC or a service manager under the PSC, the professional service contract, give, what percentage of them give a project manager or service manager assumption? Again, I'm sure you're familiar with this. So under the ECC, the project manager can state an assumption on which to base the quotation, and then that confirms what the contractor's pricing. Any hazard in a number? 19, pretty good. So 19, and some of the lower numbers, maybe you're surprised it's even that high. So 19%. So only 1 in 5 give a project manager's assumption. So that means that for 81% of quotes, the contractor's left having to guess, price the risk, and therefore it goes in very high, and then the project manager doesn't like the high value, and then we have to go back again. So it's no wonder that maybe we get to that scenario when there's very few project manager assumptions that are actually put forward. Those of you who were here last year might remember we've got some suggestions for NEC 5. Reka's going to curse me for mentioning NEC 5. This is not coming. Well, it will come at some point. Shall we call it a future development of the contract? So that's not this is where you heard it. There's no timescale for NEC 5 or whatever we want to call it. Are we friends still, Reka? That's fine. So it's not coming, but like we talked about what we're going to see in NEC 4 when we had NEC 3, knowing that there'll be a next evolution. And we had a meeting with a panel recently, so we've suggested as a group changes we wanted to see. We've had a panel, a group discussion just a few weeks ago, and NEC 5 are considering some of the clauses we put forward and are looking at those. One of those changes was this, where we've suggested some wording into NEC 5 where the contractor's got 3 weeks to do a quote, so contractor has got to submit that within 3 weeks. So we could add in the words, if the project manager has not stated assumptions upon which to base the quotation, within 1 week of the quotation being instructed, the contractor can propose to the project manager assumptions on which the quotation should be based. Within a further week, the project manager accepts or does not accept the proposed assumptions, and if accepted, these then become project manager assumptions. Now, that's not foolproof, and if they don't respond, well, you're in no worse a position. So you can't assume, there's no deemed acceptance here, so if they don't respond, then at least, okay, you're going to price the risk instead. These are suggested wordings, so these aren't guaranteed, but this is what we put forward. And it is interesting, the short contract does have contractor assumptions, so no real reason why we shouldn't be doing that. But there is clearly a problem, because only 19% of project managers are forthcoming with project manager assumptions. This will not solve it, but it will at least prompt the idea that the contractor can actually suggest assumptions and then integrate them into the contract. We have to make that contractually compliant, but I think that will be a really valuable introduction into future evolution of the contract. What percentage of CE quotations would you say typically have a program attached? 36%. And just there's a distinction here. So what Nicola talked about, having revised accepted programs with every CE quotation would be an absolute nightmare. What we're talking about here is programs that go with the quotation to help the quotation be understood, but the program itself will never become the accepted program. those CE elements will be reflected in the next accepted program. So again, I think more programs with CE quotations to help the quotation be understood will be valuable, and I think that number should be maybe double or certainly well above the 50-60% mark. That could be beneficial. Have we ever experienced a deemed acceptance for compensation for quotations where the project manager or service manager had failed to respond to the quotes and then the subsequent reminder? Surely not this time. A program maybe, but surely not for quotes. So again, this time, if the quotation goes in, project manager has to respond within 2 weeks, and then within a further 2 weeks, if they don't respond, it will be deemed accepted. 38% of project managers don't do their job, get reminded they're not doing their job, and still don't do their job, and now the contractor's quotation is deemed accepted. And there's no sanction, there's no remedy on that. It is implemented at that value. How can we not be doing that? Especially when 72% of projects using a cloud-based system that's flashing up and saying you're not doing your job, mate. So why is that the case? Do you find that with compensation events there is still a tendency to wait and see what the actual cost was before agreeing the value? Surely not. 88%. 88%. And yet we've got a clause, 63.1, that I won't read it all out, but basically 63.1 confirms that most compensation should be based on forecast, not actual. Neil will pick up on this theme this afternoon. So a majority of compensation events are meant to be based on forecast, not actual. 63.1 doesn't allow you to use the benefit of hindsight and base it on actuals. But there are numerous occasions I see where particularly clients this time are guilty of sitting on a contractor's quote, and then when the actual works come in less than the quote, they want to go actuals. And when the actuals come in more than the quote, all of a sudden, that quote's absolutely fine. Best quote in the world, very happy with that quotation. Clients can't have their cake and eat it, but apparently they can, because we're letting them in certain situations. What percentage of people in your experience do you find being contractual is considered bad or negative? Still 59%. And again, this is some people, so hopefully not the whole project team, but that's still got to be surely a number that we're getting down. It's improving. So 10 years ago, it was 85%. Now we're 59%. We don't want to carry on that trajectory, though. We don't want to be another 10 years, or we're down at 40%. That's good. That needs to get down a lot quicker. So for 10 years, we've not really done enough. We need to do more. Do you ever find that having a good relationship leads to relaxing and the following of the contractual rules? Pretty resounding. So we talked, Andy talked about good relationships, and yeah, really important, but we don't want good relationships to then relax the rules that are being followed. Because if you're not following the rules, and that person you've got this good relationship with goes on holiday or retires or wins the lottery, someone else comes in, and that person wants to follow the rules, and you've not been following the rules, and now they're going to unpay you for stuff that's already been paid. And if you've got a good relationship, well then what should the problem be in following the rules? Because we've got a good relationship and understanding, we should all understand that with a good relationship, we can follow the rules. This was an interesting one. What percentage of new contracts do you undertake joint contract training between the key parties on a particular project? 24%, whereas 10 years ago, we were at 60%. And I think there's a danger there. We're a bit complacent now that, well, we've all known NEC, we've been doing it for years. Yet we're highlighting problems here, and only a quarter of projects are doing a sort of a NEC sort of startup, real good training session jointly between the parties to make sure everyone's on the same page of understanding. So I think that's something we could improve on. Obviously, I've got a vested interest in that. We do NEC training, but you can get anyone. There's several consultants in this room who can help you in that. You can do it internally. We just want it to be done for you, because that is a really key start to a project that should be followed. Roughly what percentage of subcontracts let by the contractor on your ECC contracts are carried out using the engineering construction subcontract or the short contract? 58%? That needs to be higher though, because that means 42% of projects are using different rules down the line with their supply chain, along the line with their supply chain. I've corrected by Richard. That is, I think, okay, it's an improvement on where we were 10 years ago, but that is something I think we still need to get better at. And all of that brought me to this experiment that came to mind, and I thought it was time to rerun it. I ran this 10 years ago, and it's called the monkey, banana, and the water spray experiment. Please bear with me. A group of scientists placed 5 monkeys in a cage with a tall ladder and a bunch of bananas. It wasn't long before a monkey tried to grab the bananas, but when they did, it and the other 4 monkeys were all sprayed with ice-cold water. When a second monkey tried to climb the ladder, the researcher would again spray the monkey with ice-cold water, as well as the other 4 watching monkeys. And this was repeated again and again until they all learnt their lesson. The conclusion was climbing for banana equals scary cold water for everyone, so no one climbs the ladder. Phase 1 complete. Once the 5 monkeys knew the drill, the researcher replaced one of the monkeys with a new and experienced one, and as predicted, the new monkey spots the banana and he's off for the ladder, or she. But the other 4 monkeys, knowing the drill, jumped on the new monkey and beat it up. The beat-up guy thus learns no going for the ladder and no banana period without even knowing why, and also without ever being sprayed with water. These actions get repeated 3 more times with a new monkey each time, and astonishingly, each new monkey who'd never been sprayed with the ice-cold water, didn't even know anything about it, would join up the beating up of the new guy. Finally, a new monkey was introduced into the cage. It ran towards the ladder, only to get beaten up by the others. The monkey turns with a curious face, as if to say, "Why do you beat me up when I tried to get the banana?" The other 4 monkeys stopped and looked at each other puzzled. None of them had been sprayed. They didn't really have a clue why the new guy couldn't get the banana, but it didn't matter. It was too late. The rules had been set. So although they didn't know why, they beat up the monkey just because that's the way we do things around here. I feel that's where we're at on some of our projects. That's just how we do things around here is the answer I often get and see on our projects. So my wish for you, and especially some of the younger people in the room today, is if someone tells you something, ask them to show you in the contract where it says that. Because just because they have a voice of authority or they've got grey hair doesn't mean they know what they're talking about. Ask them to point out, could you just show me where it says that? Because if you can, then it's true. If you can't, maybe it's not true. But we are clearly, the results are telling us, but that's just how we do things, and I think we need to do something different. I assume some of you know this guy. I doubt anyone's met him, but anyone know this guy? So Einstein, pretty clever bloke apparently. He had this definition of insanity, fairly well known. Definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. Well, this survey tells us we're all nutters because we're doing the same thing over and over again and wondering why we're not getting different results. So something has to change. And I genuinely believe that this group, NEC People, can be the catalyst for change. What do you think Albert would make of our survey results? So what can we do? Well, we've seen some improvements in the last 10 years, but not quick enough. Most importantly, don't accept the current reality is just how it has to be. Okay, so don't just accept, well, this is how it is. On your big projects currently, HS2 has got a long way to go still. So big projects like that, Hinckley, there's a lot of big projects in our industry at the moment. Just because how it is at the moment doesn't mean it's right and we can't things changing going forward. So don't accept the current reality is just how it has to be. It's quite an opportunist time at the moment. We've got a general election coming up in just a few weeks' time. And in 2007, Tony Blair's manifesto was simply 3 words, wasn't it? And it was education, education, education. And I don't know if he cornered the phrase if it's copyright, but I think that should be our manifesto for our industry going forward. We've got an increased use of cloud-based systems. So we've got Digital Beehive and Think Project, CMAR, are represented today. These encourage and enforce compliance and the use of correct language, timescales and processes. However good these are, they're still run by humans who are not perfect, so there's obviously a human interaction with these. But each of these cloud-based systems, and I'm not naming anyone in particular, I don't think any of them are absolutely perfect. Each of the cloud-based systems have their own issues, and they need to be held to account to make sure that they are following the right contractual processes. So I think all of them, we need to try and hold them to account because you don't choose as contractors which one the client's chosen, and yet you're stuck with it. And some are better than others. I would name no names in this session today publicly. Be a reception afterwards. You might get a couple out of me afterwards. But NEC evolves and so should these systems. And I think it's really important that we hold these systems to account. I'm looking in the foreseeable future, the near foreseeable future, where people can report for whichever cloud-based system you're using, what it doesn't do right, allow the cloud-based systems to defend themselves, but also then say what their plan is going forward for the future. So if they are hearing enough times that certain things don't work, then hopefully they will make themselves change and make very good systems even better systems, okay? So it's not a big slur, it's just that none of them are absolutely perfect, and I think we've all got a responsibility to help them. So watch this space, hopefully you'll help me on that, and they are to help the systems to help themselves. So this is really trying to make sure that they are doing everything they should be able to do. Actions we can take out the survey. Joint workshops early in the project to set an understanding and behaviours and understand bespoke amendments. So we can get back to doing those joint workshops early on to set the tone as to understanding for both parties. Do not give or follow verbal instructions. Use NEC contracts along the supply chain. Okay, along the supply chain, make sure we're passing that along the way. Limit the number of Z clauses. Lead by example as individuals and as teams. So on your project, be the one who actually says, no, that's not right, we shouldn't be doing it that way. So as individuals or project teams, we need to lead by example. Focus on an accepted program every period. So make sure we are getting an accepted program every single period. That should be a reality, not a pipe dream, but we've seen from the stats we're not achieving that very often at all, and we should be. Keep on top of compensation agreements. All that means is that if we're not getting those agreed along the way, neither party understands their respective liability. Extend the use of cloud-based systems to all projects and also along the supply chain to subcontractors. Have a chat, Digital Beehive, Think Project, speak to the guys today, find out what the systems can do, and also think about along the supply chain, because that's the missing at the moment. We're having issues with subcontractors who are saying aren't always following the rules, yet these systems can help them to follow the rules. And here's a challenge for everyone here today. Do something different this week contractually back on your own project. And let us know in the LinkedIn group what you did and how it went. I'd like everyone to take that challenge. Not everyone's project-based, but everyone who is, just try it. Just this week, try and do something different. And in the group, report back what you did and how it went. And let's see if we can be the catalyst for change. So believe together we can change the industry. Thank you for listening.